Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you to this panel. My name is Dan Ayebade, and to our dear viewer, allow me to introduce you to our panelists today. I will start with the gentleman right beside me. Yes, gentleman on my right. His name is Dr. Fred Mumza. He's a PhD holder from the University of Manchester and has had a fine teaching career in several universities, including Kumba and Macquarie University. He has been involved in development of policy research and analysis and review for over 2 decades. Yeah, and he's a board member on boards of several institutions. So you're welcome. To cross over there, I want to do gender balance. Is a lady Dr. Tukunda Ronet Achel, is head of Department of Economics and Energy here at Macquarie University Business School. You're very welcome. And then to come back, second gentleman here is Professor Augustus Nwagawa. He's an international consultant on economic transformation. He's also the managing consultant of Reef Consult International Limited, a private consultancy firm. He went to Macquarie University, London School of Economics. If I'm to mention the schools he went to, we'll spend a whole day here, so let me leave it at that for now. In the other corner, back to another lady, is Christine Masibo, who is an economist and works with Equity Bank. Yes, and then last but not least is the gentleman right here in the blue suit, who is Muhile Francis, lecturer at Macquarie University Business School, MOOPS, and also CEO, yes, you had that right, of Neo-Econometrica, which is an economic business and consultancy firm. So I welcome you all, and dear viewer, this is a rich panel that will go deep into and delve into what it is for Uganda in this COVID-19 era, where we are uncertain about what the future is since March, when the lockdown was enforced in Uganda. And up to now, we could be, if I'm to be honest, it has never been opened fully. We still have flights which are grounded. We still have borders closed. We still have very many sectors closed. So, gentlemen and ladies on my panel today, we can go deep into that COVID-19. If I remember very well, March 18th, that's when the president announced a lockdown, and that was the start of a nightmare for many people, a nightmare for many businesses, smaller entities, from the smaller entities to the big multi-billion companies. Now, it has been a challenge to every other company. Maybe, I don't know, you might find there are companies which have not been affected, but we can all agree that the majority have been affected. Businesses have been affected, businesses have closed, companies over and other entities have really slashed their workers. I mean, it's been a challenge on everyone. So I will start off with the gentleman beside me next to me, Dr. Fred, and I will ask this question that will go through around in the panel, and then we can start from there. That announcement on 18th March, when the president said for the next, was it 21 days or 14? We started with 14, 21. Yes. What did that mean to the economy? That little statement of we have closed down this and this and that.
Thank you, moderator. I think the word you used is closing down the economy, and close of the economy is not an easy thing to have, because economies must never die, and therefore economies must never be closed down. That's why I guess the president also left some windows open. He's talked of cargo will continue to move, talked of food will continue to move, but of course, as we know, the economies are linked up. You don't shut down your leg and say, after all, it's a leg and I don't need it because I'm seated down. Your body will be affected. Blood must go through around those systems. So in the beginning, people did not appreciate the depth of those statements and actions. They came through quickly, and we saw we began to panic really managing crisis, because soon after people realized there is no food for some people. We need to find food. And then of course the immediate thing was to run to those we know who deal with food. But they were handling food for refugees on behalf of United Nations Refugee Fund, where the logistics are known. Your store is here, the World Food Program, refugees are there, you move from one point A to point B. But here was, you start with food and you must go and find where are the hungry, where are the poor. And then we realized we didn't even know where they are. So we had to go to the LOC ones, give us a list. LDUs, can you come and help to distribute? Then you realize a vehicle, there are no roads there. This is the urban setting where people walk for miles, the main road ends somewhere. So if you're carrying food in a truck, you can't even reach these people. So you need food soldiers like in mountains to go and find these people. All those realities had not been anticipated. Leave alone how much food was in these stores. Soon after we began to hear they were supplying bad food. And I can imagine you've just been told, give us 200 tons, 2,000 tons. You didn't have them. So you go scavenging. A business person can never tell you, I don't have that much. They will go scavenging, and in the process of scavenging, we found bins with snail shells in them, all sorts of rotten things, stones in them. And before we need, some people in jail. Now these are all the impacts of, you think you're shutting down the economy. It cannot easily be done. There must be logistical ways, but the way COVID came, it was an abrupt decision. But if we had done what in planning now we say scenario planning, we don't use planning anymore of history. Because they say history only teaches a fool, and history repeats itself, but not exactly this era of technology. So we found ourselves with a lot of gaps, but we should have known that if this virus has begun in China, the virus is moving through aeroplanes, it will eventually get to us. And I think this is not just a case for Uganda, we also saw it in Europe. It hit them so hard. In the US, the president was saying, there is one case on the East Coast, there's another case on the West Coast. And before they knew it, it was hitting them hard. So I think it's not just a Ugandan issue, but teaches us to say, can we do scenarios where if I said the economy is shut down, for whatever reason, it could be war, it could be an earthquake, it could be something disastrous that really disrupts the functionality of the economy. How do you restart? We've talked of my sitting on boards, and one of the things we deal with boards is business continuity plans. If something hit your computer here, can we switch to an alternative service system? So we need to be building this into our economic system to say if something is disrupted here, where else will we go? If a ginger bridge was washed away, thank God now we have 2 bridges there. Those are the kinds of things that I think the lessons that we pick from this, that an economy can actually wind up, but how do you proceed? It is easy to manage something moving, but if you subject it to tests and say if it stops, what are my fallback positions? And you can see we are borrowing heavily. And just as I close, there used to be that discussion of people asking us, why are we keeping reserves in the central bank? And then we are borrowing from the World Bank. So the name is reserves. The reserves is a very clear definition. Those are reserves. You don't burn your granary because your dinner is finished.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Fred. To cross over to you, Dr. Burnett. Same question. At that announcement, we've locked down the country. The president said, what did it mean to Uganda? Ugandan economy, I mean.
Thank you very much, Dan. Dr. Mahmoud has basically summarized it, but I will add. To some, it seemed like a long holiday. To others, to the big majority, it's like a joke. To those who went home, because there are different categories. To the children, it was, oh wow, let's go and rest. To the parents, we're going to rest from school fees for a while. It didn't take too long to realize that that is not a holiday. The economy said there's no free lunch. So no one is going to send you on a holiday. At some point you realize this is not a joke. So with time, like he's saying, the realities began to hit. And whereas some people might not have been hit directly, because If you worked, say, in the bank, you're extremely happy that for once in your life you're going home at 3. When was the last time as a mother you were home with the children at 3? But before long, you begin to realize there is no transport. Before long, you begin to realize probably I can't get food. Some of us don't live near markets, so you had to walk miles. I walked miles just to buy food, unless you could get a boda. So like he's saying, an economy is like a fast-moving car. You don't just say stop and it stops. It will overturn. We are learning in hindsight. There must be measures that you keep slamming the brakes a bit to a point where, well, it should never grind to halt, but you slow down a bit and then pick up pace. But it will never work. You will never achieve 100% by just saying, let us shut. Because he's mentioned it's like a body. Health-wise, we're having a problem. But do not forget, it's not just health. The dead don't eat. You get that? So you just cannot shut us down to protect us from a disease. We're going to die of hunger. So before the disease gets to us, hunger will have killed us. So you realize that that cannot work. So we have reached a point in hindsight where we must borrowing from procurement. It is no longer just-in-time planning. Now we need just-in-case planning. So you need to have a lot of scenarios in place. It will never work. We always teach our students, price ceilings don't work. You don't wake up in the morning and just say, the price should be this. I mean, you're looking at only one side of the supply chain. What about this side? They will react. So in the same way, you don't wake up one morning and just say, shut down. Because you're going to have the effects are going to bite. So like I began, it seemed like a joke. 14 days, none of us knew it was going to last 3 months. The longer it went, the more the apathy grew. And we're realizing that we're doing the mathematics of the numbers of those who fell sick, those who have healed. It is 0 point, of when you compare that with, for example, those who have malaria, those who have had cholera, the numbers are a lot bigger. So we're looking back and we're like, wait a minute, was it just fear? Did we even need to do this in the first place? But what is done, and hopefully the next time this happens, we will act better. We won't be reckless. You also just cannot say, last time we closed the economy, it was wrong, so this time we shall not. No, you won't be reckless, but like Dr. Mumuz has said, you need scenario planning. You need to stand your ground. I will borrow a bit from Magufuli, not everything, a bit. Stand your ground. The West might be screaming that stand your ground. Understand what is this enemy. Europe has shut down. Must I just shut down because my big brother has shut down? Stand your ground. Understand. Put plans in place now so that in case another thing happens the same way, you don't just react the way we did.
All right, thank you very much. Professor Nyagawa, maybe to chip in there, there's been a talk of saying maybe we copied and pasted what others had done, like she has hinted. Do you think that's what we did, or we did it our way?
Yeah, thank you very much. You're done. And thank you very much for inviting us to this meeting, the launch
of the equilibrium. Yeah.
When we are analyzing the impact of COVID, we need also to analyze the fact that COVID was a pandemic. First of all, it was a pandemic. Now, when something is a pandemic, what does it mean? It means even if you are not directly hit immediately by the problem, you are going to be hit by the problem. It may not be the same magnitude, but a pandemic means you are going to be affected by the same problem. Now what you require now to do is see how you're going to be affected, how you will respond, and whether your response will create a difference in protecting the people. So to me, what was done and in terms of the promptness of the response was actually very good, because you realize that the problem was from Dubai, the first ever problem. I think it was on 22nd of March, which was 4 days after the lockdown. We passed the lockdown, 1, 18th, 19th, 20th, then I think 21st, 22nd. So you realize that the first case was actually from outside, not from within, and it was from Dubai. And so the response therefore which the government took, in my view, was very good, because in terms of protecting the population, that was anybody in leadership, what ought to be done. The only problem is that, and up to now, is that the response to COVID, in terms of the effects on the economy, have been, all the responses have been one-sided. They just took a medical approach, and they forgot that the medical crisis can eventually derive an economic crisis. They do not have capacity to delineate where the medical crisis can eventually result into an economic crisis. And this is what has happened. Because we have realized now that the economic crisis, which has now been unleashed, clearly came as a result of the response which the government took. When this COVID started, I was in Manchester. I was in university, sir. I was in Manchester. I was in London itself. I was about to be the first casualty. I had gone, I was a consultant for UN, and the UN had told me to do one thing, to map where all of you guys in Uganda, your fathers, brothers, are investing, and the investment those your brothers, sisters are doing in Uganda. So I was mapping the Ugandan in diaspora, their level of investment and how much they bring here. What they bring here, as I want to go into the deeper in the discussion, is actually $1.8 billion. What I was able to map. I didn't go to Ukraine. I stopped I was in London, I was in Manchester, I was in Leeds, I was then in Sweden. I was supposed to be in Dubai and in Ukraine, up to Ukraine and so on. But you should realize that the pandemic nature of the COVID-19 did not only affect, because if somebody wanted to say, since it was happening out there, then did we have to respond? Because for us it would be different. Though you are not, because the $1.8 billion which I was able to see in Manchester, and I tend to go to New York and California and Washington. I would suppose that the 40,000 Ugandans we have, 40,000 Ugandans we have in Detroit, in New York, in North America only, without Canada even, just US 40,000. And the amount of money they are supposed to be bringing in is something which may not be feasible as a result of this pandemic, which you are saying that is something out there, why it actually might affect you. So I was able to link properly that this pandemic is very dangerous to us, and I may not support the president, I'm not their spokesperson, and I don't intend in any way to be the spokesman of NRM, but the initial response which the government I think had taken was good, only that, in the summary, just summarizing, only that it took only one approach, which was medical, up to now, actually up to now. It is very strictly medical without linking it to economic. And the medical crisis, as I've said, can link to economic crisis. You can lose $1.8 billion, which is just from the brothers and the sisters of the Ugandan diaspora. The tourism is $1.5 billion as well. $1.5 billion plus $1.8 billion is $3.3 billion, and Dr. Momza knows $3.3 billion divided by 28.2 billion GDP is 10.4% of GDP, just by matching those two. So you are losing 10.4% of GDP. So it is really very serious that this pandemic can cause a very serious blow to the economy, and therefore the response was good, only if it can extend to how you can live with it and manage the medical crisis without without translating it now into an economic crisis.
Thank you. Crossover to Francis. Remember, if we bring the clock back, I mean, if we remember at one point, we had an issue with these truck drivers, and the truck drivers were ideally the guys who were bringing the virus here. And everyone was like, why are they coming in? Why don't we stop them? Why are we allowing them in, yet we know that they are the guys who are actually bringing the virus here? And the president, if I remember very well, was like, no, we cannot, because that is as good as suicide. What's your take about that? Were we supposed to stop the trucks? Is it possible to stop the trucks? For the viewer, maybe the person out there who may be asking themselves this question, who may not be an economist, is it possible, is it feasible to stop the trucks and we keep on working? Is it possible for the economy to keep breathing without the trucks?
Thank you, Dan. I think I was one of those economists actually who, when the president ordered for a lockdown, I was one of those economists actually who were against it. Why? Not because I didn't support the lockdown, because this was a pandemic where we have put a lockdown, you're trying to control the spread. But the problem was that, as Professor Nwagaba said, we looked at it, all those in authorities looked at it from a health side and forgot that health pandemic also means an economic pandemic. So, of course, closing the borders meant that, leaving the truck drivers coming in meant that we need exports. We need imports and exports. So we have to leave, the international trade going on, because you can't just shut down. Just as she has said, an economy is like a moving, actually, not a car, but a railway or a train. You can't just stop it, just like that. So me personally, actually, I wrote an article and I was suggesting for road truck driving. What is road truck driving? Drivers from Kenya will bring in the goods. When they reach at the border, let's say the car or the container is sanitized, and then a driver from Uganda will also take off. Of course, there is a cost there. But when I was trying to do a survey, I realized that actually these private companies which are into international trade, for them, they are willing to do that. So we have a lockdown, which was actually not even a total lockdown. We had a partial lockdown. Because a lockdown means that you're not allowing any person to get out or allow any person to come in. Automatically, you will maintain the spread of the virus under control. So the problem was, if you take people home, you lock them home, and yet you keep on leaving the truck drivers coming. Because remember, all these cases were imported. You've locked people home, they are not working, meaning that the economic activity is now on hold at the start. And the truck drivers keep on coming in. They are the ones who are actually carrying the virus. So I don't know why the authorities try to ignore the road truck driving, because Uganda wasn't going to be the first country to do road truck driving. Other countries were doing it like Hungary. So the problem, they just looked at this as only as a health pandemic, not knowing that it is also an economic pandemic. Trust me, a lot of people died even before Uganda registered a single case of those who have died from the virus. You must have, in the news, you've seen people there, the border man who killed himself because he could not, get food or put food on the table for the kids. Very many people died, not because of the virus, but because of the economic challenges. The lockdown is very expensive and is not sustainable. But you can't, the only solution was to balance the two. You look at it from the health side and then at the economic side. Of course, the president every time he's come and say, no, the economy will be okay, let's first save lives. Trust me, economic costs or issues can kill even before the virus itself. That's why at the end of the day, all macroeconomic indicators, are all showing a decrease. Yes? And at the end of the day, that's why Professor Nwagaba said, actually, Magufuli might end up becoming a legend, because he knew that economic costs are going to be higher than the health issues. So, for me, my view was that if they had allowed for road truck driving, because we need those imports and exports, which never happened. Thank you.
So, no, before I leave you, the question I would have is, as a layman, as a person who is not an economist,
Yes, yeah.
you would want to tell a viewer what it means to close down trucks.
Okay.
Like no truck coming in, no truck going out. For a layman to understand what it means, or if it is sustainable, or if it is not.
Okay, first of all, Uganda, we are more independent to external economies. In fact, we have a bigger import bill. In other words, we're almost importing almost everything, even those which we can able to produce from here. So once we just close the border, let's say the trucks are not coming in the goods, automatically, you're going to see that there is a shortage of very many goods which are essential. So you cannot close the trucks, but we are saying stop the truck drivers, let other truck drivers from Uganda put that arrangement where truck drivers from the other side can reach at the border, and these ones within Uganda take over. There is a cost, but it is worth it. When we said for truck driving, they said it is costly and all that. But is the cost bigger than where you allow foreigners, to come and carrying the virus and it spreads, which has actually happened, because all these cases we have, they were brought in by foreigners, most especially truck drivers from Kenya and Tanzania.
Okay, thank you. You have it right. Trucks can be stopped, right? Because
No,
it's
they can't.
it's the bloodstream of the economy.
Exactly.
All right, go over to Christine. You can chip in on that about what it meant for the Ugandan economy, COVID-19, and before you can throw the microphone back to me, you can tell us what it meant for the banking sector, since you are in that sector.
Okay. COVID-19, it is something that was new. We're moving into the unknown. So the entire world came to a standstill, not knowing what to do next. Actually, announcing the lockdown for the first 14 days was a good idea from the president. Because I remember in his speech, he said, let's go silent and try to find out where the noise is coming from. Literally meaning, let's try to find out where the disease is being, where we can get the disease. But you see, closing down an economy completely, it would definitely expose us. How ready are we to handle different situations? For example, us in the banking sector, which is highly regulated, we have instances where we test our business continuity plans. Even if everything is moving on well, you try to do that testing. In case maybe a branch closed down, how are we able to serve our clients? How are we able to make sure that the clients still get the service without feeling the effect of maybe a particular branch closing down? So basically, this also exposed us as an economy. For example, there are things that were done previously that actually got us appreciating at this time. For example, the generaries, if we had that in place, such that we could keep the extra food, because at the moment, the food prices are going up, yet the disposable income that people have is really, really small. Also, the oil reserves, we don't have oil reserves. That is actually one of the reasons as to why they could never close the trucks. Because they're bringing in, say, oil. This is oil that is making the entire economy run. And remember, us as Uganda, we are an entirely closed economy. We are a landlocked country. And there are also other countries that depend on us. For example, the goods that go to Rwanda go through Uganda, South Sudan. So all these countries are looking at us. So it wasn't, we're also maintaining our international relations. So it was never going to be a good idea for the president to close down to close down the truck drivers completely. But it is a lesson for us as an economy. For example, to learn water transport, we had that in place. Because here there are fewer people on the ship, easy to monitor, the railway system, the trains just move with the designated stopovers. So, coming back to the banking sector, the banking sector, you're a party in the economy, and what affects your clients will in turn affect you. Much as we remained operating, but also the operations went down. and looking at loan books and everything, most of sectors and most of these businesses that are booming around town, they are surviving on credit facilities that the banks come in to help the customers continue with their different businesses. So if your client is not doing well, definitely they will not be in position to pay back their credit facilities. Actually, right now, it is estimated that more than close to 5 trillion value in loans has been rescheduled. So these are all payments that are being postponed for the future because of the effect of COVID on our clients. So it all affects us.
Yeah, of course, it all affects us. Thank you very much, Christine. Back to you, Dr. Fred Holmes. We're talking about the Magufuli way. Should we have followed that way for the sake of the economy at one point, or even now can we follow it? Is it possible?
Well, it's hard to tell because as economists, you want to, and policy makers want to use the evidence. Maybe we should leave Magufuli and go to Bolsonaro in Brazil, because he followed a similar pattern, but for him it's testing. So he's telling us what is happening. In Tanzania, they just kind of switched off the lights, so we don't know what is happening, which is quite a bit upsetting. So Brazil, I think, is a case to go. Their cases are rising. They have hit 4 million. They are one of the few countries, I think, with the US and India, who have hit 4 million. But the man has still refused to shut down, but he's doing what he needs to do. But sometimes you want to know who is in the dark, even as you have decided to switch off. You can put on whichever lights. And it's a trade-off. Economics is a world of trade-offs. The evidence is coming through that the disease possibly is not going to go away. We are being promised a vaccine. I remember I was alive in the 80s. We were promised the vaccine for AIDS was coming in 2 years. This is 40 years and still counting. So it is possible that the vaccine for corona is also going to remain elusive for quite some time. Even when it comes, there are questions being asked. Shall we be vaccinated like yellow fever after 10 years? Is it going to be after 1 month? Is it going to be every year? There are lots of unknowns. Meanwhile, the world is continuing. Children are being born. Children are being raised. People are still grappling, should they go back to school? So we need now to get into phase 2. As I've said, the lockdown helped us to map out a number of things. We were able to understand it comes through truck drivers. But now it is in the community, so you can no longer blame the truck drivers, and we noticed we could not stop them. But also we had Ugandans coming in from abroad through aeroplanes who were also still bringing it in. So it wasn't just the truck drivers alone. And there were many Ugandans who have porous borders here. The first case in Chikube, which is a district neighboring mine, was from a refugee from Congo who went back, visited his people, and came back with it. So you have no idea how many Ugandans were mingling in, and you can't just say it was truck driver. But they have come from there. We have also learned that the people who got it, at least in those first months, none of them died. They all recovered. And when they came out, they were telling us, well, we were just drinking water, resting in the sun a little bit, eat a fruit here, vitamin C. This is what we do with all flus anyway. So they are not telling us any new thing. Now I think it's time for the ministry and government to say, okay, now that this is here with us, but there is evidence that the body can actually fight it. More than 80% of the people remain asymptomatic. They won't even know. You can come here and test the 20 people, 15 people around this building. I can assure you will catch 1 or 2. But please don't tell me, because then I'll be required to be quarantined. So it's asymptomatic. So why don't we pursue that line to say whatever we did with those who are positive, let's make this the common knowledge to everybody. Because people are out there, and in Uganda now we are being told we can't even test. A test kit is 245,000. Who can afford that? And moreover, with this kind of disease, you need to be testing monthly. Because if you don't have it on today, you might get it by the end of the week. So every week you need to be testing, or every month you need to be testing. That's no longer a route to follow. So economics will simply say be pragmatic, look for alternatives. And the alternative is how do you build people's body immunities? So let's champion what food people should be eating. Get into the sun, spend there some 30 minutes, take some vitamin C. Also this hydroxychloroquine, it's still a question of Trump and the medical people. If it works, and I've seen some people in Uganda saying actually we have been using it. If it works, then let's also be available in the pharmacies and administer to people. Like what we did with malaria. It's not a wrong thing to take a drug when the disease is not there. But it will be wrong for you not to take the drug when the disease is there. So if somebody feels you're sneezing, all those kinds of things, as the president has put them out there, well, take your melon, take your katumuru chumu, eat this, rest and relax, and also go to the pharmacy, buy some vitamin C, hydroxychloroquine, and take a drug. Those fellows will move on. I think this is now the customization we need to do. The thing is not going away. For the next, I don't know how long. Even when we find a vaccine, it will still be here. So let's customize it and live our lives.
All right, thank you very much, Doctor. Let me cross over across to Dr. Tukuna. The vaccine, we have, I can't call them rumors because we haven't really confirmed the real vaccine. And we know that even when it comes, it will take time for us here in Uganda in particular to get our hands on the vaccine. So the same question, do we go the Magufuli way?
Thank you, Dan. Do we go the Magufuli way? You know, had we gone the Magufuli way, Dr. Mbumz has mentioned Brazil. At some point, he was being hit hard. When the number of coffins were being displayed on CNN, he was being hit hard. So if you want to go the Magufuli way, you must have a skin as thick as Magufuli to take whatever comes. So maybe our leaders are not a bit risk-averse, you know, because you must stand ready. Should people die like insects, you know it's going to be in your head. That's what it means to go the Magufuli way. The thing about this crisis, the policy response, is not only about the sheer size of the crisis, that 10,000 were dying in a day, sorry, that 900 were dying in a day. It is also about the unknown. The director, IGC, and also economists have this concept of radical uncertainty. A situation where you cannot make decisions with confidence because there is so much that you don't know. So whether or not we would have gone there depends on that. You have things that you know. I mean, things you know you don't know, the known unknowns. So you know, I don't know how far it is going to go. I don't know how long it's going to last. I don't know when the virus will come. You said we don't know how many times we will need to get it. They are the known unknowns. And then there are things you actually don't know, the unknown unknowns. So before you choose to go the Magufuli way, you balance between what you know that you don't know and how you can handle it, and then there's what you don't know that you don't know. And that is what we are facing now. There's a lot we don't know about this thing. What if it mutates? What if you wake up tomorrow morning and Chikuwa is all down? Well, there are so many what ifs. So we probably will just thank the government for what they did, and then say maybe it went on for a bit too long. Maybe, like Professor said, you looked at one side, but you can't just stand and say, Magufuli was right. Then the unknown. We are watching Tanzania. You never know what will happen 2 months from today. Thank you.
But for now, we're watching. We don't know what is happening there.
Yeah.
So.
Because, sorry, Magufuli is like you're eating mangoes, and every mango has a worm. Then you decide to switch off the lights and just eat. You know? So you can't tell everybody just turn the lights off and eat the mango.
So when he dies and the stench comes, that's when that's when we shall know.
So you don't know. So you can't say we shall go that way.
All right. I really want to have this question to everyone on this panel because I want to have it on record because really people out there are tired, if I could use that word. Yeah. They are. And you would think the panel I have here, which panel I have over here, are the right people to tell us the economic side of it. Yes, we talked about the hydroxychloroquine, we're not medics, we shall not go there deep into the medicine, but the economic part of it. So I want us to have it with everyone here. To you, Francis, what do you think?
First of all, the lockdown is not sustainable. it can be just in a very short period of time. But medium and long term, it is not sustainable. So that's why the question is for how long? As I said, we've been waiting for HIV vaccine for 40 years now. You don't know whether you're going to get the vaccine, or you don't know how long it is going to take, or you may even never get the vaccine itself. So the question is, you have to accept by balancing the trade-offs between health and economy, accepting that all these are actually pandemics, both health pandemic and economic pandemic. So you have to balance the trade-offs. So you have to adopt, first of all, you have to accept, adopt, survive and thrive and live with this situation by balancing to both sides.
Yes, we talk of the balance, but we leave at the word balance.
Yes.
Could you really dig deeper into the balance that we can really strike?
Well, first of all, as we've said, I'm not a medic, I'm an economist, but I've been trying to see what the medics or the scientists are doing as far as biological research is concerned, trying to come up with a vaccine and also coming up with other solutions. So you find that they are saying that this vaccine, in fact, it has mutated for over 60 times. That's why you can be having it today, then after, let's say, 2 weeks, you just take like home remedy. You don't have it, or even take some medication, but then you can again get the what? So you cannot be vaccinated right now. You can get it, it goes away and comes back. So that tells you that this health issue it is a serious one. It might be here. So how do you thrive? Of course, the scientists are saying, especially the nutritionists are saying that nutrition is very important. So people have to change their behavior, with what they eat, the diet. And in Uganda, I'll tell you that to the viewers out there that most of Ugandans rarely even take foods. Some times a week man are taking even a single food. So when Corona comes, your vitamin C levels are down. You're going to be, a victim. So the thing is, the lockdown is not sustainable, both in the medium and in the long run. So what do I mean by talking, let's say, like by balancing? Because the lockdown will put an economic activity on hold, even if you release some sectors, yes, but remember an economy works, it's a system. Once other economies are not working and others are working, still we're going to find issues. And that's why we have economies which have been, let work, but others are still closed. But still you find there's a problem. I'll tell you that bars are closed right now, but it's not the owner of the bar who is facing, the impact. Remember, there are those who supply the bars, let's say those who supply them with coke, even the workers who work for the bars, the material they use there. So you're going to find that there's a farmer who will supply, what they use to cook, let's say in the restaurant or in the bars. There's that farmer. So it comes from the farmer, to those who work for this restaurant or bar, and then finally to the owner of the bar. So you have accepted that, and there's also that advantage of the herd immunity, like what Sweden did. Sweden never closed their economy. They tried that herd immunity, and of course, everyone was like, okay, this is like a time bomb. People are going to start to die, and instead people started dying, but still they stood on their ground. Their president said no. That's the cost we have to pay in terms of health to minimize the economic cost.
Okay, thank you very much, Francis. Maybe we've talked about the hit that we took by the COVID-19 in this economy, but we didn't really break it down for our dear viewers to really conceptualize it, or maybe, make it easier for the audio viewer to understand. I'd like Professor to really put in context what COVID-19 technically meant for the economy of Uganda since March up to now, for our dear viewer to relate with what we're talking about.
Thank you. From the day the COVID pandemic was declared here, is that we need to understand some of the basic issues that everybody needs to know. And the first one is that China where the pandemic started, first of all, constitute 40% of the entire foreign direct investment which we get. Every person who comes to do business that is not a Ugandan, 4 out of every 10 is a Chinese. That's point number 1. Now, in China itself, foreign direct investment, which comes from other countries that are going to China, is 50%. Every 2 people in the entire world, 6.4 billion people in the entire world who are going to do business. Every 1 out of 2 go to do business in China. Now, what does that mean? That China has lost 50% of the entire foreign direct investment that go to China, and themselves have 40% of the foreign direct investment which come here. Is obviously that we have lost foreign direct. We have lost, in English language, we have lost people who come to do business here. That's a very huge loss. Here we don't have a lot of domestic investment. People here in Ugandans who are doing business are very few. Why? Because there are very high cost of doing business. It's only Chinese who are these days come here in large numbers to do business here, and the reason is simple. Because Chinese, they getting money is cheap, the cheapest in the world, to be able to get money to do business. So we have lost business. We have lost people who have come here to do business. Number 2, when you add up the people who come here to do business, the Chinese 4 out of every 10, plus others, the remaining 6 out of every 10, those constitute, as I've already told you before, when you add them up every year, is $1.8 billion. And our economy is the smallest, as you all know, you are all economists. Even if when the $28.2 billion related to the American economy of $24.2 trillion, and Chinese instead of $18.4 trillion. Even if China lost that, you just look at it. Even if China lost the other, then for them that's nothing. It is an economy of 18.2. It is nothing, purely nothing. But for us, we are now, most of the people come to the business are Chinese, and the rest are also foreigners, also who are linked to China, all of them, both in the raw materials, in short intermediate goods, are all of course Chinese. No commodity, no, I don't think that there's any factory here who has even up 20% of the both raw materials and intermediates that are not linked with China. So we have lost business. And then the other obvious point is that I know Fred Mumza is going to argue before we go that oil is very, very robust with the oil economy. That the oil suffered. You know, the oil price even went to negative in Texas.
Yeah.
People didn't have even where to keep those barrels, and they had to pay the way the economics works. You have now to pay where you're going to keep it. In that process, the barrels went to negative in Texas. Now, the question we should be asking as Ugandans, why did you not benefit here from this the negative oil price? You didn't. Why? Because the economy was totally subdued. There was lockdown on the 18th of March. There was total closure of hotels. Serena, nobody sleeping there. Small hotels closed. Ask Kamuswekesa. What is business closed? I told you I was doing that UN work. I went to Kachira Sugar Works, Uganda Breweries. I did the dairy. I did both dairy, the big one and small dairies. Small one, SMEs. All of them had closed. The only person who has won in this COVID is actually Kachira Sugar Works. Yes, because for them they have put another production line of what is called clean sanitizer. It's a sanitizer, and this is the first time for ethanol to have known that ethanol is very important. So they had a new production line, they raised with Uganda breweries, and instead of throwing away that thing of Squaliburu, they now produced ethanol, which this sanitizer you are using. So for them, that's it's called Clean, K-L-I, and you have seen it in the markets, in the supermarkets. That is a new baby out of. So also we should not, as the president was saying, you should not glorify very much the bad part of it. Kachira Sugar Works will tell you they have $100 billions out of that. So some people have actually won, but on because of the supply, the supply shocks, and of course the subdued demand, created a situation in which, if you look at the value chain of Uganda breweries, for example, the people who rode the crates on the lorry, that one was cut off. The people who are getting these crates of beer to the other shop in Kanungu, no job. The other men who are cleaning the lorries where they have been grabbed and the many bottles broke up, that one also closed. The people who remain in Uganda breweries are very, very critical staff. And those ones, they sheltered them there, but eventually also they failed, so they had to have shifts, which also didn't work. So in the process, there was total dearth, D-E-A-R-T-H, dearth of demand. And once that happens, people don't have money in the pocket. If that happens, nobody's going to buy commodities in the shop. If that happens, there is nobody who's going to, even the other small factories which are producing, nobody will produce. So you root the supply side as well as from the desk of the demand side. That happened. Now don't ask why you did not now gain from the other oil prices. You could not. Why? Because there was a death of the subdued demand, the supply shocks in the supply chain, which made people not now benefit from. Even if the Total had oil in the pumps, there was not much. There were not many people who were coming to buy that fuel. The price of money, the price of oil, the price of a shirt, the price of a shoes you all night will depend on how many people are coming to buy that shirt, that oil, that money in your bank. You know, why do you expect me to come and buy money in your bank? I didn't have anything to do to be able to buy your money in the bank. So your interest rate, I wouldn't even expect your interest rate to have remained high, even if Mutevere brought it to 7. Still, you don't have capacity to tell a professor to come and buy your money. It was not possible. So also the private sector credit went down. If you ask her, their loan book must have gone down. There was a moratorium, as she has told you, on 90 days. I have also benefited from that moratorium. She's correct. I have a loan in Stanbic, so I have been given 90 days. I signed a new contract with Stanbic to be able to pay later. What does that mean? What does that mean? Is that now Stanbic lost 3 months of my payment. I wonder where you are getting your salaries even. You must have your boss. The Equity Bank must be a very serious going concern to be able to pay salaries of these people when we are not paying the loans. And you know that commercial banks in Uganda, 25 of them, get their money strictly 99.9% of the money in banks is from us. She knows it's from depositors. They don't get money from IFC. They don't get money from anyone. They get money from us. So the way we behave, the way we are buying commodities, the way we are investing, the way we go there to buy their money is where they get the only money also the commercial bank earn is the interest on what? On loans and the ones where the interest income. It is purely 99.9% interest income. Interest income has been zero also. That's why they have put that moratorium, and that's why they have said there will be waivers even on arrears. So URA also, as I finish, URA has got, which is a directive, a waiver interest on tax arrears. If you do that, you know that businesses, people in Uganda don't want to pay taxes. And the president put a waiver on arrears. Now that means, the good thing, it does not mean that there is a waiver on not paying, non-payment. It meant, please, it meant, in case also you didn't understand it, it meant, as a business school, I would be very surprised because I should be the one explaining it. It really meant, it just meant a moratorium on payment of the other arrear. They are not saying, please don't pay interest, which was good. What the president meant, he wanted us to have money in the pocket to increase now the demand, create demand, and that's important. Actually, Keynes, those who have studied in Europe, as economists, Keynes, my dad was even at his house, and it took me from where I wanted to see is also here, he stayed in. Even at the Wealth of Nations, he was there at his house in Scotland. And it took me also to say, wanted to say where is he? Was Adam Smith. He was at his house in Scotland. Keynes said, even if you wanted to get these people, remove soil, put it back. No cemetery, dig a pit, remove the soil, put it here, bring this soil back the whole day, and that person is earning. Do it for creating what? Demand, making sure this person can have money in the pocket. So people will don't, this COVID, let me summarize it in one word. This COVID-19 has created a subdued demand. It made us not have money in the pocket. That meant that we didn't have capacity to buy any commodity. That meant we didn't have capacity to attract your brothers who are in London and everywhere to come and invest. We have lost 10.4% of the GDP. It meant Serena Hotel cannot have anybody to sleep on their bed sheets. If they don't sleep on the bed sheet, it meant there is soap which is in the shop, nobody will buy it. Buy it for what? Sheraton, nobody needs soap. So that soap is making it no business. So it really meant total closure of anybody who is buying the commodity. That's very bad for the economy, because an economy is driven by the way in which you drive the economy is demand. If there is no demand, nobody is coming to buy commodity, nobody in the school is going to eat the portion of our children, nobody in the Kasese will survive. And that's why the president should have looked at the medical side. Let me secure, as they use in the military. In the military, they have to secure these premises, for example. That once he secured our health, which was very good, as I've told you, he now needs to secure the economy in terms of us having money. And what does that mean? It means we should have money in the pocket. And if it means, as Keynes said, so what the United States have done and what the government needs to do is to get for them the 2.2 trillion stimulus package, which has been the one that brought this American economy back. You have been telling me, Dr. Holmes, Trump, you see, after the Republican convention, he was really down. After the convention, people have realized, but it is the same Trump who brought this economy and stopped the Chinese commodities to come here, and the trade companies, it is their ginger of US. Their ginger of US has come up, Mexican companies, borders again closed, Trump closed them and they started to produce the commodities. What did it want to do? Creating demand by having jobs. So if you went to US before COVID, you would be able to see that there is a growth. But here, we have been having jobless growth. And they go to Serena, say the economy is growing at 6. Which economy, Dr. Mons? That was growing at 6.2. Where you would not see it because the people who would have money in the pocket, coming from agriculture, agricultural value chain, fruit trees, in the factory, our mothers were cultivating pineapples and selling, and people in Kasese selling maize. It was nowhere. The money is from MTN and Airtel and Stanbic Bank. GDP of 59% coming from sectors which are not the ones that should be holding the economy and living agriculture. So if you want to create demand here, put the money in these small enterprises, the way they have done with UDP, but the one whether these boys in the capital and the girls will get it. So what you do is to make sure that as many people as possible get money in their pockets, and if it was Andrew Mwenda, he would say, what is it that can economically be democratic? The sector which would be economically democratic to create that demand and bring this COVID to it will be that economy which will put money in the largest number of people in the pocket, which is agriculture value what? Yeah. Value chain. That's all. And I am supporting therefore government to put money in this UDP, but only if the rules can be swift enough to make sure that these SMEs, people in agricultural value chains, fruit trees, tomato sauce, or the girl selling friendly and so on, can access it. That's the only way this economy can come back, sir. But otherwise, it is very hard.
Very hard, you say. Thank you very much. Those are very insightful views and submissions. And at this point, that's where I would want, before we come to Doctor, I would want to talk to you, Christian. about the banking sector. You're the inside person you have here, you're the inside out plug or guy there in the banking sector. About the loans. He talks about the loans. He talks about, of course, Museveni came out to do what? To give the
moratorium on these deferrals.
Exactly. So, where does this leave the banking sector?
Okay. With the loan restructuring, basically means, this was, the regulator gave us an opportunity to handle it case by case. And handling it case by case, it means a client comes over, we talk. So we have to understand, you have to make us understand how your business was affected. Now, depending on that discussion, then there are various alternatives that are at the client's disposal. So it's up to the client to choose. For example, a client can decide to say, let's sort all the installments. Maybe I start paying after 6 months. That is one alternative. Alternatively, a client can say, okay, let's reduce on the installments such that I pay in a longer period. That is also another alternative. Or the client can say, okay, I can be able to pay maybe interest, but let's leave the principal. So basically, here the financial institution was given a chance to hear out their clients, and it's up to the client to gauge, because at the end of the day, you, the client, you know how much you've been hit, you know what alternative is best for you. So for us, we are just advisors. So the client will choose what is best for them. So you do a new contract after that. But what does this mean for the banking sector? The interest that you're supposed to earn, this is the, instead of earning the money right now, it's profits.
It's deferred.
You're postponing it in the future. Yes, that is what it means. But then the other thing, it doesn't mean that that the banking sector was not lending out completely. There are actually some businesses that were actually making money. So the loan book was affected, or that we are not lending out as much as that would have lent out when everything was okay.
All right, thank you. I'm back this side to Dr. Mumza. Professor made, quite a number of submissions about what could be done. Actually, that's why we're going after what we think we could advise as a panel of economists, what we could advise, what our recommendations are. But before we go there, we would want to chip in on the tax waiver. And maybe whatever he talked about, you would want to comment about what he talked about.
I think he's very right, and this also should be speaking to the future. I've heard people talk about the stimulus. We are in a situation where even before you talk about a stimulus, you need a resuscitation. Let's use the medical language, that's how Corona came. When somebody collapses, you shut down the economy. You're not stimulating anything. You need to resuscitate, to bring it back on its feet, then you can stimulate it. But all that said, where exactly do you need to inject the stimulus? Now, very many people think it should go to the factories. Wrong. It should actually go to the households, because they are the ones that kickstart that demand. That's why Keynes was not saying, give the money to the factories. Give it to the household. Then the household, because they are trying to buy the food.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they're trying to buy it. Then the factories will begin to
come
respond.
automatically.
Because factories respond to the market. She's just been talking about the loans. You are structuring which loan. If this loan was to a school, it doesn't matter how long you restructure it. This school earns its money from fees. So you are giving it a 90 days. Now, 90 days have passed, the schools are still closed. The same school is going to go back to that bank to restructure, and the situation is as it was in April. And we don't have a window to say, oh, the schools are going to open soon. So both the bank and the borrower who owns the school are at a loss even to inform this restructuring position. They're just putting days there. So you have to come back and say, how do we resuscitate the households, which is aggregate demand? How do we make poor make sure people have the money. In the UK, it was an automatic system because the same employees were paying their taxes. So they just used what they call the reverse system. Money was leaving your bank account, coming into the tax system. Now they put money into the tax system to reverse it back. And they said, we will pay you, because the records were clear. So it was just that we were picking 40% from you, your income, as a tax. We are going to send you 80% of your income. Because your income was known, your bank account was known, so they just reversed that. And within 2 weeks, 600,000 people, 6 million or more, were already getting that money coming through. But now those people went into the supermarkets began to link up with the factories, and the factories began to work. So I think here, because of, I don't know whether it's not even failure to understand, this is logic of basic economics, but because people are corrupt, they want the money to go to the factories. We also the circus on masks. Why did we give factories to manufacture masks and now we're all saying the quality is bad? Already there were masks on the streets.
Well, people didn't want them.
All we needed
them
was give money to the households and tell them, now that you have money, spare something and go and buy masks. Then the mask manufacturers across the country would have responded. So the 80 billion that went into masks, we should have found ways of giving it to the communities. And that also now speaks to our taxes. We have spent the last 15 years shifting more from income taxes to consumption taxes. Meaning if there is no household demand and there is no consumption happening, the taxes are going to suffer. The reason we are doing that partly is because Uganda's incomes are informal. Even those who are formal, they don't want to tell you their income. Members of parliament will wake up and say, our allowances should not be taxed. You can only tax our income. And their income, they make sure is the smallest. The bulk of their earning is in allowances. So I'm not going to fight with parliament. They make the laws, they make the rules, they make the regulations. Then put it on consumption. It doesn't matter whether they earn it as income, salary, or allowances, they're going to consume it. And I'll surely catch them there, and they are buying fuel. So this has also affected our taxes in that if people are not consuming, the taxes are not coming through. Now, even the moratorium you are going to give to the companies to say, okay, don't pay as you earn. Remember, the company is earning out of people consuming its products. So you are forgiving somebody who in the first place is not earning the money you want to forgive them for. So it's a whole work that we need to come back and rethink the policies before we make the pronouncements. So taxes, it has helped a few companies because you want them to have liquidity, but also it has helped the companies to bring back some of their employees. Because I'm paying my employee 1 million, and I must pay the tax as well, which is 30%. Meaning I must find the entire 1 million. To pay this person the 700, they must carry home, plus the 300 I must take to government. But if government says, fine, with me the 300 don't bring it, then I can bring in these employees early and say all I need to find is the 700 million, I mean 700,000, which is going to you as a salary. And if I've cut their salaries by half, then literally I can bring more people back on board quickly, because all I need to find is the 350 to pay half their salaries. The government has agreed I will pay late after September. But remember, it's now September. The 3 months have passed. We are waiting for government to re-extend this because the lockdown is still on for most of these entities. So there are a number of things that we expected before 1st of September. The Minister of Finance should have come back and give a signal. Because now the Revenue Authority is hard pressed. It now has to come to these companies and say, now in September, begin to pay. There's their cost collection. Policy is ministry. And the ministry, I think the week has passed before they came out. I know there was a tax imposed on textiles, of which moved it from 70 million per container to about 490 per container. Everybody noticed it was a mistake. And the minister just said, defer it for 3 months. Now the 3 months have passed. The minister has not come back to rescind that. Now we're going to have people who are between dressing and eating and buying sanitizer. What do? I will settle the forfeit the sanitizer because I must eat, I must dress. So dealing with corona, as I've said, must be an economic approach besides the medical approach. And the economic approach should be saying, how do I incline people's decisions to do the right thing medically? Remember, I've said we must eat preventive foods. These people must first of all have the money. As you're telling them, buy the fruits, take vitamin C, rest. Have you empowered them economically to do that bare basic minimum? So I would want the president's COVID team to be revised. It should not be as it was in March and January. It now needs scientists and social scientists. So that both can speak the medical language, the cultural language, the social science, and the economic language. Then the president will have a very comprehensive message for Ugandans to say, going forward, this is what it should be. I know a number of people who are on the science side working with the president have actually incorporated some social scientists and other aspects. I make a contribution to that through one of the president's advisors who has reached out to us to put the economics into this whole thing. So that's the kind of the way we should be seeing to go. I'm not about to sit in the same room with the president because I don't have the 240,000 to test for COVID every week. I can test once but not. So I will stay away and watch on TV.
All right, thank you very much for that wonderful information. We are running out of time. Dear viewer, thank you for keeping it the equilibrium, and where this is where we keep world economics real. We're going to take final comments from each of you, our panelists, and then we can go for a break, and then we shall be back for another session. I'll start right across to Dr. Tkunda. What are your final comments, and then what are your recommendations, the physical and monetary recommendations, going forward in this COVID-19 era?
Thank you very much, Dan. Thank you, viewers, for being with us up to this time. A lot has been said, and a lot of recommendations have been given that I agree with. One is stimulating demand right from the households. So we face the task of finding these people, because it's mentioned in Europe it was very easy, you know who they are. Now, while for us it is not as easy. So my recommendation in line with that will go with something completely out of COVID, which is corruption. And I may just leave that at that. As we are stimulating household demand, corruption. That has to be fought. Otherwise, we are shooting ourselves in the foot. They will remain without the monies to buy. The same people who are rich will grow wealthier, and we're instead opening up a different can of worms on the other side. And then two, I mentioned about the known unknowns. There is no two ways. Strengthen the resilience of the health sector. Strengthen the resilience of your businesses. They need to diversify supply chains. If China was our basket, suddenly realized that is a death trap. You cannot only have one place to keep going to. So you need to find ways of strengthening that and strengthen the resilience of the people. So we come down to the household. So while we are resuscitating the economy, you must handle the health sector because it's a health issue. You must handle the business, and you must handle the individual. You must find ways that the cash for work thing will work. Professor Holmes has said, if it means they dig holes, they dig holes. But the question is, who are digging the holes? Because if you get Mr. Muhire, and he's the same person who is going to dig one hole and fill it up, when you have the real poor person, and the money has not reached there, then we are deceiving ourselves. And I will still end with one word: corruption.
The word corruption. Why don't you add the word corruption? If you are short.
Because a lot of money is flying around. But when we see the money flying around, we are very happy. World Bank, thank you very much. Yay! Then at the same time, you see our faces getting sad. Yay! Because somehow you fear the money is going to take the same route. Especially when you begin mentioning stimulating demand of the households. As an economist, I sit and look and I'm like, who are these households that are going to get this money? When you mention Emyoga, who are going to be in this Emyoga who are going to get the money? You know, what happens when you mention expanding sage? If I go back to the village, I don't think my grandmother's getting sage. So you're going to expand sage. Who are these people who are getting sage? And why is it that my village, there's no sage? What is the problem? So I say very loud here, and immediately it gets very low. So,
Do you have sage on this panel?
I am the sage for my mother.
yeah, you see?
So,
Does she get?
no, she doesn't, so I'm the sage. Who has to take care of her.
All right, thank you, Dr. Kunda. Let's cross over to Muhire, Francis. Your final remarks, and then maybe your recommendations as we move forward in this period of COVID-19, and as we endeavor to open up and get back to normal. They say there's no normal to be new normal, but what can we do?
Thank you, Dan. I will start from, just as we've said, that the major economic solution we'll be looking at is boosting the aggregate demand. So you're going to realize that at the moment, because most of the people are still actually home, the economic activity is still paralyzed, people don't have the money to spend, because the economy is all about the flow of income and expenditure. They don't have incomes to spend or to have that expenditure. So the obvious impact is that about 3 million parked home, unemployed, newly unemployed due to the pandemic. And remembering that these over 3 million people parked because of, they became unemployed because of the pandemic, they found the other ones the other big number who have been unemployed. We've seen the major sources of government's revenue, let's say the tourism sector, the revenues declined by 60%. And then when you look at the FDIs, the foreign direct investment, because when you look at whether the manufacturing sector or the service sector, it's dominated by foreigners. So we've seen that FDIs have, also the revenues from FDIs have reduced by 40%. Not forgetting that when there was that panic of the outbreak, there was a huge sum of money that left the country in the form of profit repatriation. Because foreigners had to start back, going back to their home. They thought maybe by then their countries were actually more safer than Uganda. Until of course later they realized that actually Uganda was safe. But during that short period of time, we lost a lot of money leaving the country in the form of profit repatriation. So now the next question is, when you look at the way the government, looking at the role of the government, what it has done, what it is doing, and what it is proposing in the form of the stimulus package, do you think they are doing the right thing? For me, I will tell you this is my opinion, that the government, the problem, as she has said, that the corruption, the word I can use is that we have broken institutions and structures. When you look at the way the government is spending, the way the government is behaving, having lost over 300 billion in the form of tax revenues, because it has declined. We are facing an economic recession. The GDP has been declining for the last 6 months, up to 3.1%. So you're seeing that the government is not actually earning. It has lost a lot of revenue, which has actually forced it, and they're using that as the justification to get actually debit. That's why we are calling that COVID-19 debit trap. But before we even call it COVID-19 debit trap, you see Uganda's debt was at 25% of GDP in 2012. Last year it was at 46%. So you might think that we've been actually having a pandemic. But from 2019, it has jumped from 46% of GDP now to 47.1%, meaning that we are soon meeting the threshold, which is 50%, of which even that threshold of 50%, which is set by World Bank or IMF, there's also no justification about that. So my question is, I want everyone to look at this situation. This 2020, Uganda has faced one, we faced locust invasion, and we've been borrowing for that. There was one flying island, but one flying island also became like we have too many flying islands which are going to be floating. So we've been also borrowing in the name of floating islands now, and now COVID-19. So we are borrowing this, these huge sums of money to mitigate, to bring down, solutions for such uncalled situations. The question is, the government is not earning the money, and now we are forced to get the debt. Are we using this debit or the funds, maximally or efficiently? Because the way the government is behaving, it's like actually we don't have these issues. Why? We've not reduced on government expenditure. Instead, we are increasing the what? The government expenditure. We are still creating more districts, we are still, having all these activities, let's say, elections and all that, we cannot postpone them, they have to happen. So you're going to find that the government expenditure is still as if everything is normal. So the government has tried to, one, it did safety nets by, let's say, giving food and mask. I remember they gave 6 kilograms of posho and beans to every Ugandan, to those who received those in urban and pre-urban. Yes. Okay, it was given to the vulnerable poor. Now, remember they have given to the vulnerable poor, but also have the poor. You've locked these people for over 6 months. You've given them 6 kilograms of beans and posho, and the president majestically, ordered his people in the kitchen prepare and mingle posho and beans, and he cut in 2 portions, and he said this can last for 10 days. I want everyone to listen to this, that this posho can last for 10 days. Now we are into 6. That's the best the government is what? The government is doing. Are you seeing that? So the problem with Uganda is that we don't have institutions, we don't have structures. The appetite for the government when it comes to spending, we spend even more than the big, developed economies. Now, let's say boosting aggregate demand. Of course, you would say let the government give, instead of giving money, I mean food, let's say posho and beans, why don't you give them money? Some people don't actually like posho, instead they like matoke. Remember beans and posho, and I want to see the problem we have in this country is about the policies which are half-baked. I want to give you an example that in 2018, Uganda had the best harvest of corn or maize. Remember farmers were crying, saying, please, because the price, dropped, a price per kilogram of corn dropped from 1,700 to even 200. Farmers were crying for the government, to come for the rescue. The government would have bought actually that, a corn and keep it, because we always have plenty during harvest, and then we have scarce during the times of what? Of planting to bridge the gap. The government, they even didn't give it attention. But guess what? They were looking for for corn to buy, and it wasn't available until they were even buying, poor quality. So the question would be, if that the police are saying, let's give these people posho and beans, and yet some of them actually don't like posho, they like matoke. Beans and posho, it is a durable food. You can keep it for a long time. Matoke, you cannot keep it, once harvested today, you cannot keep it for more than a week. That's why the prices of matoke and other perishable commodities have been going down, and the president was saying the real economy which involves agriculture is not going to be affected. Someone has talked about the eggs, the same thing. But to wrap this up is that we are getting these loans. It is going to take by 2018, the debt we had was going to take 98 years to be paid. Who are going to pay that, that debt? It's you, even the kids who are not yet born. Even the kid who is born today who is going to buy Pampers, there is a tax there. And yet, our huge appetite for expenditure on the government side, who are spending as if everything is okay, is still high, and instead actually going high. So the problem with this country is that we have half-baked, policies, and two, we don't have institutions. They are just there in space. You can see institutions. Because if she's talking about corruption, some people are going to make a lot of money out of this. In fact, we might get a trillion Ugandans in this COVID-19. I'll give you a question. When they were having these tests at the border, maybe I want you to look at this. Some people benefited that truck drivers were coming in because there were some tests happening at the border. Uganda as a government will have a healthcare system, of course, which is broken, but at least would have done something, send medical doctors or team from Rabo to go. But guess who was handling those tests? A private firm. How much were the cost of the test? You see now they are saying it is, I want to call this as a trap. Did the government borrow in the name of getting, food to make sure that they save lives and give them food, which can last for 10 days and they have to be home for 6 months? And now, even after getting those loans, now we have to pay for the tests. Yes? And remember, we're trying to boost the aggregate demand to make sure that a civilian, a Ugandan, has some money in the what? In the pocket to spend on. Now you're telling them, we are not going to start testing, but you have to pay 248,000 shillings. Now, let me say this before I go, is that the government is trying to do, it has done something, it is proposing to do other things, but are we looking at immediate challenges? Look at when you look at those who are in retail and wholesale, you have those in businesses who have rented out, they have been home for the last 4 months, they are coming back, yes? And this is the problem the government is aware of, that tenants and landlords, whether both commercial and residential, people have not been working, they have not been earning. The landlords want their money because also maybe they are serving loans, yes? If you solve problem, that's where you start, that's where you're supposed to start from. You understand? But the government is instead keeping quiet. Start with tenants and landlords because there is a problem there.
Thank you very much. You took your time, but it was worth it. It was worth it. So we are winding up, and we'll cross over to you, Christine. Your final remarks and then your recommendations. You could give the recommendations in the other side of expertise.
Okay. Looking at this whole scenario that has hit us, for the economy to start to stabilize, the supply and demand side have to be equally catered for. And if you look at us, if I can say, the starting point of demand starts from the households themselves. And the biggest percentage of our population, that is close to 84%, are into the informal sector, of which this informal sector, almost 90% are young people below 30 years who are involved in this informal kind of work. Now, if the demand is not coming through, people do not have the disposable income to buy these other different commodities to make sure that the supply side and the demand side are catered for. If you look at one of the recommendations, that is recapitalizing UDP of around 580 billion. Here the question is, which people are going to get this money? Does UDB, does it have the expertise? Which people are going to assess these different businesses? Because when you look in the banking sector, yes, usually you're looking at this sophisticated kind of security, but is everyone in reach? Say a land title, maybe cars, is everyone in reach of such kind? So this is where the question is how ready is UDP, or how trained are their personnel to assess these other different kind of businesses to ensure that that our people are catered for. If that is handled, it will actually provide cheap credit to our people. Because if you remember a scenario of the war in South Sudan, when traders had their merchandise and business disruptions, government came up with a plan to compensate people that were affected. But still, that also came with its own questions, and some people are not satisfied with the way this whole matter was handled, because the question was, some claim they were left out. So that is where the whole thing is, our data capture system as a nation, how are we able to get to know where these people are all located, how are we able to know the kind of businesses they are in, because you see there are also smart Ugandans who will want to use this avenue to actually get money for, like, they're not in that business, they're not in activity, but because they're seeing there is an avenue of making money, and because of our poor data capture systems, they want to go that way. So it calls for an entire structural change, which I think if it is done right, it will be able to get our small businesses, which employs most of our people, on board.
Thank you, Christine. Okay, before we can maybe wind and then, or maybe before we can finish this and then go for another session, I'll have the two gentlemen beside me have 1 minute of their final comments, and then we can call it a day for this session. Let me start with you, Dr.
I think one of the main messages coming out of this is people live in an ecosystem of things. We have learned a lot of this in the water sector. We used to look at a river, but then we looked at an ecosystem. That the trees, the swamps, the catchment area for that river is as important as the river you're trying to look at. And this came out very clearly when we were discussing about Bujagali. Put a dam, don't kill the river, and then people said, but this river picks water from so many other places. He has talked about the floating vegetation. The River Nile is part and parcel of Lake Victoria, and this entire catchment, which is in Kenya, it's in Rwanda, it's everywhere. So we need to know that don't just focus on the health system itself, focus on the entire ecosystem, the weaknesses that have been in health, and these things have been there. Corona literally kills those with underlying conditions, most. If you have your old age, you're possibly suffering from hypertension, diabetes, Corona kind of affects all flus, take advantage of those things. Now, this disease came and found us with a very fragile health system. And we all knew it was fragile. But we're just talking about, the women who are dying giving birth. We have improved them from 500 to 335. Why should a woman, even a single one, die giving birth? Don't tell me the percentage is now lower. This is somebody's wife. This is somebody's mother. This is somebody's sister, somebody's daughter. They have no right to die giving birth. But because of corruption and other weaknesses in our system, a nurse is not there, some blood is not there, a tablet is not here, something is not here. Now, this weak health system has come to hit everybody. Now they realize, we needed ambulances. Please volunteer ambulances. We needed this. We should have known that we are together in this system, and the stronger the systems are, the better for us. You may not mind about that hospital, but you're going to go to the field and fall sick there. That's when you realize, this is not my hospital, but for now, I needed a doctor here, even if it is just to stabilize me so that I can go to my Nakasero and IHK and Aga Khan in Nairobi and eventually India. You are going to begin with that person. So we live in an ecosystem. And I think Corona has subjected this system to a shock test. We do this in the banking sector. Give it a shock and say, supposing my biggest client does not pay, what happens? That's why banks have survived. Because they go through this every other year. Supposing all these fellows don't pay, why survive? And thank God for the Bank of Uganda's regulation. So the economy also needs to be looked at and subject to shocks. Let these things function. So let's invest in the health sector, not saying that is for Kisenyi people. That's why Corona will enter into the system. And before you know it, you share your bank with that same person in the Kisenyi. And for you might say, well, I go to the corporate wing, but the person serving in the corporate wing is also serving at one point the long queues in the non-corporate wing. And they are going to come through there. The young man who is washing your car, the pump attendant, these fellows are going to infect you. So it's important for us to begin looking at a system-wide approach, all the way from the president to the peasant. Those two P's do matter. The president and the peasant must be on the same page addressing the issues that affect both of them. If a peasant can't pay rent for their child in the university, your bungalow, your hotel, your milk, your cows are going to be affected. Because remember, this is how you get the money. You sell milk, one cup, and eventually you have sold that can and you look after the other cows. If that one cup does not sell, you're going to pour the milk, the cows will die, and it's a chain. And I think Corona has helped us to rethink, and we are in conversation with the Ministry of Finance to rethink the planning. People are saying, the NDP had already just been done. This is time to say, well, that was before Corona. What lessons have we learned? I would not even say anybody is a fool if we said, can we rewrite this plan? After all, come next year, we're going to have a new president. Maybe the same man, but will be new.
He has to be a new.
He will be a new president. He may be a new person. They are all of them right now writing their manifestos. Can we rewrite a new plan that begins of 2021?
Yeah.
Because Corona was not there
Yeah.
when the NDP3 was written.
Yeah.
So it's time to rethink, and Corona is going to be here, but it has also taught us things we never knew.
Yeah.
Can we incorporate those in the new plan? Let the 2021 be a new beginning.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Doctor. Like you say, we live in an ecosystem, and then Corona helped us to realize that and open our eyes, and we're like, okay, the peasant, the president, at one point,
It's all P. That P is a person.
at one point there will be borders closed and all of us shall be here. Finally, last but not least, you, Professor Nwagawa, your last comments.
Yeah, I think most of the things have been said. Maybe picking from Dr. Momzade, I'm one of the main consultants in the National Development Plan. I'm actually the head of the writing of the but what the funny part of it is that when we finish the strategic direction of the National Development Plan, we have 5 objectives. The cabinet had already passed what they want to do, they had already passed the budget. Then I was wondering if I already passed the budget, and the budget is supposed to run on the strategic
So
plan.
they were planning after the budget.
Yeah, the budget has been leading the plan. That's one of the things
The
we
budget
need to
has
solve.
been the budget has been leading the plan. Then I said, now, wow, this is the country where you guys are operating. So the point is, even if the National Development Plan has to be rewritten, which I will be willing to do because I will make money,
And save money for
which
the
as a
country.
Muchiga really, which is, it will be very obscene money because for us, the Machiga, you know us, we are very straightforward, and we rarely would really want to do something which is, and also our mothers having come from East African revival movement, we rarely would do something which we know is wrong. So this National Development Plan is really just a big joke. It's a farce, it's a white elephant, the budget is never linked to the plan. We have 5 major objectives. But I know, as you heard someone himself, who was the chairman of NP, himself saying nothing was linked, himself in his own words. By the time the NDP 1 ended, which I have evaluated, I was an evaluator for both NDP 1 and then mid-term review of NDP 2 and writing strategic plan of NDP 3, which we have done. But I know for sure, 100%, still the budgets will be non-aligned. That's the first problem we have here. You plan, but you never implement.
And with that weakness, Corona will take
So
advantage.
exactly. So when the Corona came on the 18th of March, and when we had the budget on 31st of March, the budget should have started in the Parliament, and on the 31st of May, it is approved. So when COVID came in, it was 18th of March, it had started in February. So there was very good time. We were still writing. But nobody came to us to say, can you change this objective 5? For example, one on human development, which is 4. That's where we should be, health education. But do you know why? The budget, this budget, which has been read for financial year 2020, 2020, 21. Do you know the budget for Ministry of Health was 6.2%? If you check, just Google it out. Last year was 6.2% of the national budget. Now it is 6.1. Just Google it out and disprove me. Is now it has very down, it has declined. Agriculture, 3.9 has gone down. The Maputo declaration is saying 10. So we are still having a balance of 6.1 percentiles. So Uganda, you are in a very big joke. May have given up for you even. The good thing which gives me continue to work, to do my work every day, is I don't work for you only. We work for also other serious countries. You are that thing working almost makes me come here and these shows even. I know it will not end here, but I know this is just useless for Ugandans. I wouldn't even have come if you said it, since you said this Zoom. I know somebody in Sweden will see who is serious, and another one in Ghana, and another one in Botswana who is more serious. But you guys are really not serious. Because if you tell me that this is a COVID year, let's look at this as I finish. This is a COVID year. You should really have had a COVID budget. Budgeting period now is a very beautiful process. The budget begins in September. That's when the budget is circular. from finance goes out. In September of the same year, then it goes to December, the budget starts, but by March, the budget processes, the budget framework papers from the sub-counties, the budget framework papers of the districts are out. Keith Organization Finances, boys and girls there, and very good, very, very well studied in Manchester, University of London, they are studied everywhere. They are very, very serious cream of people. But they just wonder, these ones. Then in the 31st of May, Parliament signs off the budget. That's how the budget process works. This COVID came when we had like, in my view, we were like 4 months. And we would have done that. I was now in the final drafting. We would have recasted our strategic direction. But for me, with all of a sudden to realize, Cabinet has already passed the budget. When did they come to consult? They're the same people who paid us. Big money, not small money.
Taxpayers.
Which I know a country which you know very well will come and pick the same document and do serious work on it. So finally, the back to COVID, I think the comment is a very simple one. Is that you cannot solve a problem by the same means which created it.
Yeah.
How can you solve a problem using the same means which created that problem? You see, the Baganda have a saying, is there any good Muganda here who are friends of mine? I love Uganda. I've been teaching most of Baganda, my friends. I'm in a Rotary Club of Muyenga. I'm actually major donor in the club. You can clap for me, we immunize, then clap for me, then I tell you. The reason why I said you clap for me and you are very good people, you have a lot of faith to do something we don't know, is that we, in Rotary, we are the ones who give you money to immunize children. All this money for immunization. We contribute money every meeting. Rotary, we meet every week. Like for us, we meet every Wednesday at 6:30. So this budget I'm putting on, I paid 40 million. 40 to make sure that your children are immunized. When I pay 40, Bill Gates adds now multiplies 3 times. So Bill Gates now on my payment of 40 million paid 120. So me and Bill Gates is 160 million. But that's why I picked it all. And I can go to London, I can go to New York in any meeting I will enter. If you are to others, you normally say small wheel. But small wheel. But Minister of Health, when they know that now the donors are coming in, $700 million to the Minister of Health, that's 6.1%, which fell from 6.2. Over last year, my God, in this year, whom can you tell that you are going to reduce the budget of the Ministry of Health? And you say you're a government, really. That you do report that you're a serious government. So me, when I say these people voting, you know, in voting, when you cast your vote, it is cast in the market. It's really market. We normally cast our votes in the market. You are buying a commodity. I will cast my vote, so I will get so and so, who will have a policy. You are buying a policy. When you ask yourselves and your mothers and sisters, when you do this, which policies are you buying? Maybe I look at you sometimes, I just shudder. You cannot solve your problem by the same means which created this. So the Baganda, my friends, have a saying that akakade akobuja amagwa gagafumite mirundi ebiri. Akakade akobuja. If you are the real Baganda, most of you could be Bichukudi Baganda, just born on the square here. But if you're Uganda from Butambara, my friends from Peter Maiga from Budo, Umuivu, Maiga, and the others, friends of mine, you know that akakada akobuja. Meaning the old woman, akobuja in Uganda means co-wife. Your co-wife. You know your co-wife doesn't wish you well. So akakada akobuja means the old woman who moves on the way, the path, this village path. This village path which are in a very small path. This is a bush, this is a bush. There is a thorns. Amagwa is a thorns. And when you see a thorn, you remove it, isn't it? Because another person following you is going to be in a problem. It could be even a blind person. So remove it from the way. But akakadakobo chakakorachi kokakaja tambu in Uganda. Instead of removing it, and you will try to step over, to jump over. Will that help the next person from you? So this is what the government is doing, because this is a global problem. So it needs global solutions. And that's what I was telling you, doctor. That they don't think that because Italy is far, New York was far, Chicago is far, Bolsonaro is far, these coffins you are seeing are very far, they will not reach here. These coffins can reach here. It's a pandemic. So try to solve the problem and remove that that Magua, another person who is following you, whom you did, may not even be you.
Okay.
It may not be your children, but you remove it.
Professor, I'm scared.
Especially through the prioritization of the budget, so that what you are doing on the budget is precise. I expected the national budget. Our national budget this year is 45 trillion. I expected like minimum 15 trillion, isn't it? Should have gone to the Minister of Health. You get now 6.1 times what do you get? It's very, very, very simple. But really, like minimum 35% of 40 should have gone to PPE, personal protection equipment, the bed, that's what they expected. Did it go there?
Thank you. Thank you. Kakadakobuja. Well, we can all agree that the COVID-19 pandemic has really hit the economy and the different stakeholders, of course, who have roles to play within the government, within the health sector, and even us as people. So we at the Equilibrium, what we do is maybe put out what we think is right to be done and give our recommendations. And we only hope that this will be a stepping stone to what can be a better way to approach this COVID-19 pandemic. We can't mend economies, but we can at least try to patch up what we can and say what we can and put out there what we can, so as to be able to get out of this safe and healthy. Till the next episode, my name is Dan Aibale. See you then.
Okay. Thank you very much.